Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why you came in? Stood there for a moment, looking around, trying to remember what you were about to do, only for it to slip through your fingers like steam off a cup of coffee? If you've had a moment like that recently, you're not alone. In fact, if you're over 60, it might even be a regular visitor. But what if I told you that just 15 minutes a day, yes, just a quarter of an hour, could help slow that brain fog, strengthen your memory, and bring back that sharp, focused version of yourself you thought was long gone? This isn't a gimmick. It's not a pill, a puzzle, or a high-tech gadget you have to plug in and learn how to use. It's something simple, natural, and maybe even a little old-fashioned: reading. That's it. 15 quiet minutes of reading every day. That tiny habit can work wonders on your mind, and I'm going to show you how. You see, most people don't think of reading as exercise. We talk about working out our bodies, stretching our muscles, eating healthy foods to fuel our energy. But what about the brain? Your brain is a muscle too, and reading is one of the best ways to stretch it, strengthen it, and even soothe it. Now let's be honest. We live in a world that doesn't encourage quiet. These days we're surrounded by noise, phones buzzing, news flashing, the television humming in the background, endless scrolling. Our attention is pulled in 100 directions every hour. It's no wonder we feel scattered or forgetful. The brain hasn't had a moment to just breathe. That's why 15 minutes of reading each day is so powerful. It gives your mind a break from the noise while waking up the parts of your brain responsible for memory, focus, and comprehension. It's like giving your thoughts a deep stretch after being cramped in a tiny space for too long. One of my neighbors, Margaret, started this very habit last year after she retired. She told me, "I didn't think much of it at first. I just figured I'd finally catch up on the stack of books I hadn't touched since my kids were in diapers. But after a few weeks, I started noticing things. I could remember phone numbers again. I stopped walking into the pantry and forgetting what I was after. I felt sharper." It wasn't magic. It was mental movement. You see, reading doesn't just entertain us. It activates multiple parts of the brain at once. When you read, your visual system, language processing, short-term memory, imagination, and even empathy networks all light up at the same time. That's like a full-body workout, but for your mind. And here's the truly exciting part. Researchers have found that daily reading can actually delay the onset of cognitive decline. People who read regularly tend to preserve memory and thinking skills longer than those who don't. It's like a protective layer, shielding your mind from the wear and tear of time. You don't need to devour thick novels or read dense nonfiction to get the benefits. You don't need to analyze Shakespeare or understand neuroscience. You just need to engage. Pick up something that interests you: a novel, a biography, a devotional, a history book. Even a newspaper or magazine works, as long as you're focused and present with the words. It's not about what you read, it's about how you read. Purposefully, curiously, like your brain is a sponge, and this story or article is the water it's been thirsting for. Now, I know that after 60, some people worry their memory isn't what it used to be. You read a paragraph and then it's gone. You start a chapter and can't quite remember the details the next day. I hear that a lot. But here's the twist. That's okay. The act of reading itself is still beneficial, even if you don't retain everything. In fact, that moment where you pause and say, "Wait, what was that again?" and then go back to reread, that is brain strengthening at its finest. That's your mind working to focus, recall, and reinforce. Don't get discouraged. Celebrate those small rereads. They're part of the process, and you don't have to do it all at once either. If sitting for 15 minutes straight sounds too long, break it up. 5 minutes with your morning coffee, 5 more after lunch, a few minutes before bed instead of watching one more episode of a show you've already seen. You'll be amazed how much more peaceful and clear-headed you'll feel when you swap out a little screen time for reading time. One gentleman I met in Michigan, Harold, made a game out of it. He read one short story a day, usually no more than a few pages, and afterward, he'd tell his wife about it over breakfast. Not only did it improve his memory and attention span, but it gave them something new to talk about, something to laugh about. And Harold? He swears it helped him feel 20 years younger between the ears. Because that's the secret no one talks about enough. Mental clarity doesn't just help your brain, it helps your spirit. It brings back confidence. It reconnects you to yourself. And after 60, when so many things in life are changing, your schedule, your social circle, your body, having something that grounds you, engages you, and empowers you is priceless. So if you've been feeling forgetful, foggy, or just off lately, give yourself 15 quiet minutes a day. You don't need to do yoga. You don't need to meditate on a mountaintop. You just need to pick up something to read, open it, and give your mind the gentle workout it's been craving. Once you start, your brain will thank you. And before long, you might just find yourself remembering a few more names, solving the crossword a little faster, or finishing your stories without pausing halfway to think, now where was I? And that's just the beginning. Because once your mind starts waking up again, it doesn't want to go back to sleep. The beauty of reading for just 15 minutes a day is that the benefits don't stop when you close the book. Something interesting starts to happen. You begin to notice changes in the way you think, the way you listen, even the way you speak. The world around you seems a little sharper, a little more colorful. That fog you used to feel in the mornings starts to lift. And no, it's not your coffee, it's your brain beginning to breathe again. Let me tell you a little story. I once met a woman named Arlene at a library event in rural Kentucky. She was 71, soft-spoken, and the kind of person who always brought banana bread to church potlucks. She told me she had started reading again, just 15 minutes every evening before bed. At first, and she said, I just wanted to fall asleep faster. But then I noticed I was thinking clearer during the day. I could follow conversations better, and I remembered what I needed at the grocery store without my list. That hasn't happened in years. You see, reading does more than just pass time. It builds mental stamina. When you read, you're training your brain to stay with a single thought, a single voice, a single story. In a world full of distractions, that kind of focus is powerful. It helps you hold on to your thoughts longer, organize them better, and retrieve them faster when you need them. Now think about how helpful that is when you're in the middle of a conversation and someone says, remember when we went to that Italian place last summer? And instead of drawing a blank, you say, yes, it was Luigi's. We sat near the window. You had the eggplant parmesan. That moment of clarity, that sparkle in your memory, is exactly what we're talking about. Reading strengthens your ability to follow a thread. It's like mental knitting. You keep the pattern going, stitch by stitch, paragraph by paragraph. And when you've trained your brain to do that with a story or article, it starts doing it with real-life conversations, to-do lists, directions, even your own train of thought. Now, I want to talk about something you might not expect. Reading helps reduce stress. Yes, really. Studies have shown that just 6 minutes of focused reading can reduce stress levels by over 60%. That's more than walking, more than drinking tea, even more than listening to music. Why? Because reading invites your brain to leave the immediate world behind and slip into another. It lowers your heart rate, it eases muscle tension, it gives you space, mental, emotional, and even physical, to breathe. And we all need that. Especially after 60, when life's pressures don't disappear, they just change shape. Maybe you're caring for a spouse or dealing with health issues of your own. Maybe you've lost people you love. Maybe retirement isn't what you thought it would be. Stress doesn't retire when you do. But reading, it gives you a doorway out, even if just for 15 minutes. That moment where you lose yourself in someone else's story, that's not wasting time. That's healing. That's therapy your heart can afford. There's a gentleman I used to meet every week at the senior center in Phoenix. His name was Raymond, and he was 82, a retired bus driver with a soft spot for Western novels. Those stories, he told me, they give me something to chew on. They remind me I'm still part of something bigger. Even if I don't leave my apartment all day, I can still go somewhere. That's the magic. Reading keeps your world wide, even when your body starts to slow down. It reminds you that you're not stuck. You're still exploring, still learning, still moving, in the most important way of all. And as your stress goes down, guess what goes up? Your sleep quality. That's right. People who read before bed tend to fall asleep faster, sleep more deeply, and wake up feeling more rested. And it's not just the physical rest, it's the mental reset. Reading clears out the clutter from the day, settles your thoughts, and guides your brain into a peaceful rhythm. That's how you avoid lying awake at night, replaying conversations, or worrying about tomorrow. Now, I will say, skip the screens before bed. Try not to read on your phone or tablet if you can help it. The light can interfere with your natural sleep cycle. A real paper book? That's your best friend when it's time to wind down. And don't worry about finishing anything. This isn't school. There's no test, no deadline, no gold star. You don't have to plow through 200 pages to get the benefit. It's about the habit, not the finish line. Just show up for those 15 minutes, like you'd show up for a good friend. That simple consistency will do more for your mind than any crossword puzzle or brain training app ever could. You're not too late. You're not too old. Your brain hasn't closed the door. It's just been waiting for you to knock. And once you do, once you settle into that daily rhythm, you may be surprised by what opens up. You might find your creativity coming back, your ability to express yourself. You might even feel a little more like yourself, the you that tells stories with ease, remembers birthdays without the calendar, and looks forward to each new day with a curious mind and a steady heart. Because that's what reading gives you after 60. Not just sharper thinking or better sleep, but a renewed connection to your thoughts, your stories, and your inner spark. And once that spark catches, well, you might just start feeling like your best years aren't behind you at all. They're right here, in the next paragraph, waiting to be read. Because once that spark begins to glow, you start to see the world and yourself a little differently. There's something remarkable that happens when you spend a few quiet minutes with a book each day. After a while, it's not just your memory that improves or your stress that softens. Something deeper begins to shift. You become more present, more patient, more in tune with life. The noise of the world fades just enough for your inner voice to get a word in. And that's not just good for your peace of mind, it's excellent for your brain health. You see, when you reach your 60s, 70s, even 80s, your brain starts to crave something it doesn't always know how to ask for. Purposeful engagement. That means activity that challenges your mind without overwhelming it. Something that requires focus, curiosity, even emotion. Reading gives you all three. Let me explain. When you read, you're not just processing words on a page. Your brain is building images, imagining voices, remembering settings, and predicting what's going to happen next. It's doing all that with every sentence you read. That's an incredible amount of mental energy. And it's exactly the kind of workout your brain loves. It's like dancing for your neurons. And if you've ever read something that made you laugh out loud or cry or nod quietly because you just got it, you've felt that engagement. That moment when the book reaches out and grabs you, that's your brain fully alive, fully lit up, fully present. That presence, the ability to stay in the moment, is something a lot of us start to lose as we get older. We worry more. We replay the past. We drift in and out of conversations because our minds are tired, overstimulated, or just not in sync anymore. But reading gently pulls you back to center. It trains your mind to stay in one place, with one voice, one idea. And that kind of mental stillness, that's the gateway to clarity. I once had a conversation with a man named Saul, retired contractor, father of four, big hands like baseball mitts. He wasn't what you'd call a reader in his younger days. I never had time, he told me. I was always fixing something. But after his knees gave out, he found himself with hours and no tools, so he picked up a mystery novel, just to pass the time. Now, 5 years later, he reads 2 books a week. He told me, I don't forget where I put things as much anymore. I remember names better, and I'm calmer. Then he leaned in a little and said, it's like I rewired myself without even trying. And that's the thing. Reading isn't loud. It doesn't show off. But over time, it rewires the way you think, feel, and focus. That's especially important when it comes to maintaining something called neuroplasticity. That's a fancy word, but here's what it means. Your brain's ability to change, to adapt, to build new connections. For a long time, scientists thought your brain stopped growing after a certain age, but they were wrong. You can create new brain cells and new pathways deep into your golden years if you give your mind the stimulation it needs. Reading is one of the few habits that actively supports neuroplasticity. Every time you learn a new word, every time you connect a theme from one chapter to another, every time you visualize a scene, you're encouraging your brain to build and strengthen those internal highways. It's like mental road work, but without the noise and construction signs. And here's something you might not expect. Reading also boosts your empathy. Now, I know that might sound soft or even unnecessary, but stick with me. When you read fiction, especially stories with characters, dialogue, emotion, you step into someone else's shoes. You feel what they feel. You experience life through another lens. And that's important, because the more connected you feel to others, the more connected your brain becomes. Social understanding, emotional regulation, compassion, these all keep your brain working in complex, deeply human ways. That's why readers often stay mentally and emotionally agile longer than non-readers. Their minds aren't just full of facts, they're full of stories. And stories, my friend, are how we make sense of life. Take Mrs. Mendez, a retired nurse I met in San Antonio. After her husband passed, she said she started reading romance novels. Not for the love stories, but for the emotions. They reminded me that I can still feel, she said. They kept me from going numb. And that emotional stimulation? That's brain activity too. It's memory, imagination, connection, and healing, all wrapped up in a story. So whether you're drawn to fiction or nonfiction, history or poetry, memoir or mystery, every time you turn a page, you're giving your brain something priceless: engagement, expression, and evolution. And the beauty of it? You're doing it without pressure, without performance. Just you, the words, and a few peaceful minutes that belong only to you. Because after 60, it's not about how fast you read, how much you remember, or how many books you finish. It's about showing up for your mind, keeping it awake, curious, and connected. And the more you show up for your mind, the more it will show up for you. In those small, joyful ways that remind you your best days aren't behind you, they're right here, in front of you, on the page. By now, maybe you've picked up on something subtle about this reading habit. It's not just about memory, or focus, or even brain health. It's about aliveness, that rich, full sense of being connected to something deeper than the errands of the day or the creaks in your knees. And for many folks over 60, that's exactly what they're missing, even if they haven't said it out loud. I once sat across from a man named Clarence in a community center in Georgia. He was 79, a former railroad worker, sharp eyes, slow smile. He told me something I'll never forget. He said, "You know what no one prepares you for when you retire? The silence." And it wasn't just the quiet of an empty house. It was the stillness in his mind. I didn't realize how many years I'd spent solving problems, talking to people, thinking about something all the time. And then one day it just stopped. That's what happens to so many people in their later years. Life slows down, routines shift, and the brain, once busy and buzzing, starts to idle. It doesn't shut off completely, but it settles into a kind of quiet that isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's just empty. But here's what Clarence said next. Then I started reading again, and I swear after a few weeks, it felt like someone turned the lights back on inside my head. That's the gift 15 minutes of daily reading can bring. It fills the stillness with color again, with movement, with new ideas, new stories, new possibility. And you know what happens when the mind gets moving again? The mood lifts right along with it. You see, reading doesn't just stimulate the brain, it helps balance your emotions. It gives your thoughts something positive to focus on, something outside of yourself. It interrupts the cycle of worry or boredom that can creep in when you don't feel mentally engaged. And slowly it builds resilience, not just mentally, but emotionally. If you've ever felt more irritable lately or less patient than you used to be, or just a little down without knowing exactly why, you're not alone. That's often your mind saying, I need something to chew on, something to do. Reading answers that call gently but powerfully. Even just a few minutes of getting absorbed in a story, laughing with a character, solving a mystery, learning something new can shift your emotional state. That's not just comfort, That's chemical. Your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, those feel-good messengers that boost your mood and keep your mind balanced. And here's a beautiful bonus. Reading also strengthens your sense of identity. As we get older, life naturally asks us to let go of certain roles, parenting, careers, even parts of our health. That can leave you feeling like you're not quite sure who you are anymore. But when you read, especially books that inspire you, challenge you, or even reflect parts of your own story, something stirs inside you. You begin to remember your voice, your beliefs, your values, your interests. You re-meet yourself through the page. I met a retired teacher named Beverly in Arizona who told me she started journaling again after years of not writing. It started with reading one memoir, she said, a woman about my age. And I thought, I've lived some stories too. And she had beautiful ones, hard ones, funny ones, stories that came pouring out because reading woke them up. That's the ripple effect of a reading habit. It doesn't stop at the brain. It flows into your confidence, your self-worth, even your creativity. You start having more to say in conversations, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're engaged again. You're learning again. You're living again. And this is something I hope every person over 60 hears loud and clear. You are not finished. Your story is not over. Your mind is not beyond growth. If anything, this might just be the beginning of the richest chapter yet. Reading gives you the tools to write that chapter, with clarity, with joy, with presence. And here's another quiet benefit that means more than most people realize: connection. Because when you read, you suddenly have new things to share with the people in your life. Maybe it's a fun fact, or a powerful quote, or just a funny story. But those little sharings open up conversations, and conversations build bonds. And bonds, they keep loneliness at bay. I've seen couples, friends, and even entire families grow closer just by talking about what they've read. It gives you common ground, something fresh to discuss that isn't politics or aches and pains or the news. It's nourishment for your relationships. One couple I knew in Maine, June and Robert, used to read side by side every evening. Different books, same couch. Then they'd talk about their stories afterward. It's like our brains are dating, June joked. And she was right. That simple ritual gave their marriage new energy and helped them stay connected, even as their bodies slowed down. So whether you live alone, with family, or in a community, reading gives you a bridge, a way to reach out, connect, and stay part of the world around you. Not as a bystander, but as an active participant. And once you feel that connection again, to your mind, your heart, your people, you begin to feel more whole and more hopeful. Because the truth is, there's still so much life in you, so much curiosity, so much joy waiting just beyond the next paragraph. All you have to do is sit down, open a book, and give yourself those 15 quiet minutes. And as that habit continues to grow, it starts to do something even more unexpected. It begins to shape the way you approach every other part of your health, your energy, and your daily rhythm. That's the secret power of reading. It may begin as something small, just 15 minutes a day with a good book, but the ripple effect touches everything. You might start off doing it to help your memory or pass the time, but before long you're sleeping better, managing stress more easily, even making healthier choices without realizing why. You see, reading does something deeper than most people give it credit for. It reintroduces structure. And after 60, when so many of life's schedules have been lifted, work, school, raising children, it's easy to lose that rhythm. The days start blending together. Morning becomes afternoon, Tuesday becomes Thursday, and you find yourself asking, what did I even do today? But when you carve out a little time each day for reading, you reestablish something important. A daily anchor, a moment you can count on, a moment where you show up for yourself. That kind of consistency gently shapes your day. When you start reading in the morning, it sets a calm, focused tone. When you read before bed, it helps your body and brain wind down. And once you've built that habit, your mind begins to expect it. It starts preparing for that focused time, much like your stomach starts grumbling when lunchtime rolls around. And you know what that means? You're training your brain, not just to read, but to regulate, to anticipate, To prepare. Those are executive functions, the very skills that support independence and confidence as we age. Even more surprisingly, this 15-minute reading ritual often leads people to make better decisions throughout the day. It sounds strange, I know, but think about it. When your mind is clear, when your stress is low, when your thoughts are organized, you're more likely to take that walk, to cook something fresh, to call a friend, to stick with your physical therapy exercises. In other words, when your mind feels good, the rest of you tends to follow. I once met a woman named Linda at a wellness fair in Oregon. She was in her late 60s, widowed, and had recently been diagnosed with early-stage arthritis. I felt stuck, she told me. Physically, emotionally, everything just slowed down. She'd been sleeping poorly, skipping meals, and rarely left the house. Then her niece gifted her a historical novel and said, "Just read one chapter a day, that's it." Linda didn't think it would help, but she gave it a try. Fast forward 3 months later, she was reading every morning and had built an entire routine around it. "I wake up," she said, "make tea, read for 15 minutes, stretch, and then go outside for a walk." She smiled and added, "It's the best I've felt in years." And it all started with that book. Because the brain and body are never separate. When you nurture one, the other responds. Now there's one more benefit I want to talk about, and it might be the most valuable of all: confidence. You wouldn't believe how many older adults I meet who say things like, "My brain just doesn't work like it used to," or "I'm not as sharp anymore." And they say it with resignation, like they've already given up on themselves, like they've accepted decline as fact. But here's the truth. Your brain is still capable of learning, still capable of growing, still capable of surprising you. And when you start reading daily, even just for 15 minutes, you start to feel that again. You remember something from your book during a conversation. You catch a subtle joke or reference that might have flown over your head a few months ago. You make a connection between something you read and something happening in real life, and suddenly you're not just keeping up, you're contributing. That spark, that return of self-assurance, can change everything. I met a retired salesman named Frank in Pennsylvania. He said reading gave him his edge back. "I stopped talking in circles," he said. "I could finish a thought again. I could speak with purpose." He started volunteering at the local school, helping with reading groups for third graders. "They think I'm helping them," he chuckled, "but really they're helping me stay young." Because that's what confidence does. It pulls you back into the world. It reminds you that you're not done, not fading, not stuck in the past. You're still growing, and your mind still has something to offer. Reading helps restore that belief. Word by word, page by page, you remember who you are. So when people ask me, "What's one thing I can do to feel better after 60?" I don't say go to the gym. I don't say change your diet. I say read. Give yourself 15 minutes, not to escape your life, but to enhance it, to return to yourself, to reclaim your voice, your spark, your clarity. And when that becomes a part of your day, everything else becomes easier. The clutter in your mind quiets down, the days feel more meaningful, and you begin to feel like you again, maybe even better than before. Now you might be wondering how to keep this habit going, how to choose the right books, how to stay consistent even when life gets busy or your energy dips. Now that you've seen what just 15 minutes of daily reading can do for your brain, your mood, and your sense of purpose, the question becomes, how do I make it stick? The truth is, the hardest part of any new habit isn't starting, it's continuing. But reading has a beautiful advantage. Once it becomes part of your rhythm, it becomes something you look forward to, not just something you have to remember. It's your time, your pause, your reconnection. It's the mental cup of tea you give yourself every day. And the way to keep that alive is simple. Make it sacred, not rigid or forced, just personal. Pick a spot you love. Maybe it's your cozy chair by the window. Maybe it's your porch in the morning sun. Maybe it's tucked in bed before the lights go out. Keep your book nearby, like an old friend always within arm's reach. And don't worry about what anyone else is reading. This isn't a race or a book club competition. This is for you. If you like historical fiction, read that. If you love gardening magazines or spiritual devotionals, or even funny essays about dogs, wonderful. The only rule is, it has to interest you, because when it does, your brain leans in, listens, and lights up. Now, I know some days are harder than others. You might be tired, distracted, not in the mood. That's okay. Even 5 minutes counts. Even one page. The important thing is not breaking the chain. If you skip a day, just come back the next. No guilt, no pressure. Just return to the page and pick up where you left off. Because here's the real gift of reading. It waits for you. Patiently, quietly, and every time you show up, it welcomes you back with open arms. And here's something beautiful that happens with time. People start to notice. Your loved ones might see that you are sharper, more focused, even more cheerful. You might start finishing your sentences with more confidence, remembering stories more vividly, or expressing yourself with words you haven't used in years. You become someone others want to talk to listen to learn from, because you are full of stories, full of wisdom. And reading keeps you connected to those gifts. It keeps your mind open to new ideas and your heart soft to new emotions. And if you've ever doubted that your best days are still ahead, if you've ever felt like your mind was slipping away, or that the world was moving too fast without you, this habit reminds you that you still belong, that you are still growing, still contributing, still learning. In fact, let's take a moment right now, just between us. Take a deep breath. Really. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Now say to yourself, my brain is still strong, my story still matters, and I am not done yet. That's not just a nice thought. That's a truth you can live by, 15 minutes at a time. If this video resonated with you, if you felt even a flicker of hope or inspiration, I want to invite you to do 3 things. First, share something in the comments. Tell us what you're reading, or what reading has done for your life. Or maybe share a book that changed you. Your words might encourage someone else who's just starting their journey. Second, if you found value here, give this video a like. It helps us reach more people who need this message. People who might be feeling lost or foggy and don't know where to turn. And third, subscribe to the channel. This is more than a place for videos. It's a growing community of people just like you. Curious, courageous, committed to aging with energy and intention. We'll be here every step of the way with more stories, tips, and conversations that speak to you. Because aging doesn't mean fading, it means refining, deepening, getting closer to the truest version of who you are. So here's my final encouragement. Pick up a book today, any book. Read just one page. Let your brain remember what it feels like to be engaged. Let your soul feel seen again. And come back to it tomorrow and the next day and the next. You are still learning. You are still valuable. You are still you. And that is more than enough. Here's to sharp minds, full hearts, and the stories that keep us forever young. Take care and keep turning those pages.